Lucy sat on a plush carpet, her small fingers tracing the intricate designs of her favorite storybook. The living room was warm and filled with the scent of freshly baked cookies, the gentle hum of the fireplace a comforting background to the soft, melodic voice of her mother. Sunlight streamed through the lace curtains, casting playful patterns on the walls. This was her sanctuary, a place where fairy tales came alive and anything was possible. Once upon a time, her mother began, her voice weaving the beginning of a magical tale. Lucy's eyes sparkled with wonder as she imagined the enchanted forests and brave heroes described in the story. Her mother's presence was like a protective shield, making the fantastical seem real and within reach. "Mommy, do you think fairy tales can come true?" Lucy asked, her voice filled with innocent curiosity. Her mother smiled, a tender expression that reached her eyes. "I believe that life can be full of magic if we look closely enough," she replied, brushing a strand of hair from Lucy's forehead. "Even in the hardest times, there's always hope and something beautiful waiting to be discovered." Lucy's world was perfect, wrapped in the warmth and love of her mother's stories. But perfection is fragile, and life has a way of shattering even the most beautiful illusions. One cold winter morning, the air heavy with the promise of snow, Lucy's father woke her with a solemn face. "Lucy, sweetheart, we need to talk," he said gently. Confusion clouded Lucy's mind as she saw the tears in his eyes. The news of her mother's sudden death came like a storm, leaving devastation in its wake. The funeral was a blur of black clothes, whispered condolences, and the cold, unyielding reality of loss. Lucy clung to her father's hand, her small frame trembling with the effort to understand a world without her mother. Jack and Olivia, children from the neighborhood, stood by her side, their presence a small comfort. Jack, older and braver, put a protective arm around her shoulder. "We're here for you, Lucy," he said, his voice steady despite the grief in his eyes. Olivia, younger and more timid, held Lucy's hand tightly. Days turned into weeks, and the house that once resonated with laughter and stories now felt empty and hollow. Lucy retreated further into her books, seeking solace in the familiar tales. But even the magic of fairy tales couldn't erase the pain of losing her mother. Lucy's father, though equally heartbroken, tried his best to keep their lives together. He cooked meals that didn't taste quite right, read bedtime stories in a voice that lacked the enchantment of her mother's, and tried to fill the void with his unwavering love. "Lucy, your mother wouldn't want you to be sad forever," he said one evening as they sat by the fire. "She believed in the magic of life and finding happiness even in the darkest times." Lucy nodded, tears slipping down her cheeks. "I miss her so much, Daddy. It hurts." "I know, sweetheart, I know," he whispered, pulling her into a comforting embrace. "But we have each other, and we'll find a way to keep her memory alive in our hearts." As the days passed, Lucy slowly began to navigate her new reality. The house still felt empty, but the warmth of her father's love and the support of her friends began to fill the void. She continued to escape into her books, but now with a new understanding that the magic of fairy tales wasn't just in the stories themselves, but in the love and hope they inspired. The year following her mother's death was a blur for Lucy. She clung to her books, the fairy tales offering a fragile refuge from the pain that lingered like a persistent shadow. Her father did his best to maintain a sense of normalcy, but there were days when even he couldn't hide his sorrow. As the last of the summer sun cast long shadows through the kitchen window, Lucy's father called her to the living room. His face was drawn and serious, but there was a glint of something hopeful in his eyes. Lucy sat beside him, her small hand enveloped in his. "Lucy, there's someone I want you to meet," he began gently. "Her name is Emma, and she's been a friend to me during these tough times. I think you'll like her." Lucy's heart tightened with apprehension. She had heard of Emma in passing but had never met her. The idea of someone new entering their lives, especially someone who might try to take her mother's place, filled her with dread. Emma entered the room with a warm smile. She was elegant and composed, her eyes sparkling with kindness that seemed too perfect. "Hello, Lucy," she said, kneeling to meet Lucy at eye level. "I've heard so much about you. Your father tells me you love fairy tales. So do I. Lucy forced a polite smile, her mind racing. She couldn't shake the feeling that something was off, but she pushed the thought aside. Her father seemed happier when Emma was around, and Lucy didn't want to take that away from him. Over the next few months, Emma's presence became a constant in their home. She cooked meals, read stories, and even helped Lucy with her homework. But as time went on, small cracks began to appear in Emma's facade. It started with little things. Emma's smile would falter when she thought no one was watching, her tone sharp when she thought only Lucy could hear. Lucy tried to talk to her father, but he was often too tired or distracted to notice. He had been coughing more frequently, his face pale and gaunt. One rainy afternoon, Lucy found her father sitting in his study, a handkerchief stained with blood clutched in his hand. Panic surged through her. "Daddy, are you okay?" she asked, her voice trembling. He looked up, pain etched in his eyes. "I'm fine, sweetheart," he replied weakly. "Just a little tired. Go on and play. I'll be all right." But he wasn't all right. His health deteriorated rapidly, and soon he was confined to bed. Emma took over the household, her kindness now replaced with cold efficiency. She managed the doctors, the medication, and even the finances. Lucy felt more and more like an outsider in her own home. One night, as Lucy sat by her father's bedside, he took her hand in his. "Lucy," he whispered, his voice barely audible. "Promise me you'll be strong. No matter what happens, remember that I love you." Tears streamed down Lucy's face. "I promise, Daddy," she choked out, her heart breaking with each word. A week later, her father passed away, leaving Lucy utterly alone. The funeral was another blur of black clothes and solemn faces, but this time there was no comforting hand to hold. Emma stood by, her face a mask of composed grief, but Lucy could sense the change. The warmth and kindness were gone, replaced by a cold, calculating demeanor. Lucy's world, once filled with the warmth of her father's love and the magic of fairy tales, had become a cold and hostile place. After her father's death, Emma's true nature emerged fully. The woman who had once pretended to be kind and nurturing now revealed herself as a tyrant. It began subtly. Emma imposed strict rules on Lucy, dictating her every move. "You must do as I say, Lucy," she would say, her voice icy. "This is for your own good." Lucy tried to comply, but the more she obeyed, the more Emma's demands grew. She was no longer allowed to see her friends, and her beloved books were locked away. Emma monitored her every action, ensuring she had no moments of respite or joy. One evening, Lucy overheard a conversation that sent a chill down her spine. Emma was speaking with a man, her voice low and conspiratorial. "We'll be married soon, Alex," she said. "And once we are, everything will be ours. The girl is just a nuisance we have to deal with." Alex, Emma's new husband, moved in shortly after. He was younger, with a charming smile that never reached his eyes. Lucy tried to stay out of his way, but Alex seemed to go out of his way to find her. His gaze lingered too long, and his touch felt invasive. "Lucy, come here," he would call out, his voice dripping with false sweetness. "Let's have a little chat." Lucy's discomfort grew into dread. She sensed the danger but felt powerless to escape it. One fateful afternoon, the situation reached a breaking point. Lucy was in the kitchen, quietly preparing a meal, when Emma stormed in, her face contorted with rage. "What did you say to Alex?" she hissed, grabbing Lucy's arm with a painful grip. "Nothing," Lucy stammered, her heart pounding. "I didn't say anything." "Liar!" Emma screamed. "You're trying to turn him against me." Before Lucy could react, Emma snatched a hot pan from the stove and pressed it against Lucy's arm. The searing pain was immediate and excruciating. Lucy screamed, tears streaming down her face, but Emma showed no mercy. "You'll learn to obey me," Emma said, her voice cold and menacing. "Or you'll suffer the consequences." That night, as Lucy lay in her room, nursing her burn, she heard footsteps approaching. The door creaked open, and Emma entered, her expression devoid of any humanity. Get up, she ordered. Lucy obeyed, her body trembling with fear. Emma dragged her to the balcony and forced her to the edge. The height was dizzying, and the cold night air cut through her like a knife. You think you can defy me? Emma snarled, her grip tightening on Lucy's arm. I could end you right here, and no one would care. Lucy looked down, the ground far below. Her fear reached a crescendo, but something inside her refused to break. Please, she whispered, her voice barely audible. Don't. Emma's eyes gleamed with malicious delight. Begging won't save you, she said. You are nothing. You have no one. For a moment, time seemed to stand still. Then, as if by some miracle, a noise from inside the house distracted Emma. She turned her head, loosening her grip just enough for Lucy to wrench herself free. Lucy stumbled back into the safety of the house, her heart racing. The next few days were a blur of pain and fear. Lucy avoided both Emma and Alex, finding solace only in the fleeting moments when she could remember her father's words. Be strong, she repeated to herself, a mantra that kept her going. Lucy's life under Emma's rule had become unbearable. She spent her days in constant fear, her nights filled with restless dreams of escape. Every word, every action was scrutinized, and Lucy felt her spirit slowly breaking under the weight of Emma's cruelty. One evening, while cleaning the house, Lucy overheard a conversation that made her blood run cold. Emma was speaking on the phone in hushed tones, but the words were clear enough. I'll take her to the old village this weekend. No one will miss her there, she said, her voice dripping with malice. Lucy's heart pounded in her chest. She had to leave before the weekend. She had to escape, or she might never have another chance. That night, she stayed awake, formulating a plan. She would pack what little she could carry and leave the moment an opportunity presented itself. The day came sooner than expected. Emma announced that they would be leaving early Saturday morning. Pack your things, she ordered, a sinister smile playing on her lips. We're going on a little trip. Lucy nodded, trying to keep her face neutral. Inside, she was a whirlwind of fear and determination. As she packed, she slipped a few essentials into a small bag and hid it under her bed. She knew the journey would be her only chance to escape. Saturday morning dawned cold and gray. Emma and Alex loaded the car, and Lucy climbed into the back seat, her heart hammering in her chest. The drive was long and silent, the tension palpable. Lucy watched the landscape change from suburban streets to dense, foreboding forests. She knew she had to act soon. As they drove deeper into the woods, Lucy saw her chance. The car slowed to navigate a particularly rough patch of road. Now or never, she thought, her pulse racing. She faked a need for a bathroom break, clutching her stomach dramatically. I need to go, she said, her voice shaky. Emma sighed with exasperation. Fine, but make it quick. There's a clearing up ahead. The car stopped, and Lucy stepped out, feigning discomfort. She walked into the trees, glancing back to see Emma and Alex distracted. Taking a deep breath, she ran. She ran with all her might, the branches scratching her arms and face, her legs burning with effort. She's running! Alex shouted from behind. Lucy heard their footsteps and the sound of the car door slamming. Panic fueled her, giving her speed she didn't know she had. The forest was dense, and she zigzagged through the trees, hoping to lose them. The chase was harrowing. Lucy could hear Emma and Alex shouting, their voices getting closer. She stumbled over roots and rocks, her breath coming in ragged gasps. Just as she thought she couldn't run any longer, she broke through the trees and found herself at the edge of a swamp. The murky water stretched out before her, and she knew she had no choice. She plunged into the swamp, the cold water seizing her breath. The ground was unstable, and she struggled to keep moving, each step a battle against the sucking mud. Behind her, Emma and Alex reached the swamp's edge. She won't get far, Emma sneered. Keep going. Lucy's strength was waning. She slipped and fell, her hands sinking into the muck. Tears of frustration and fear blurred her vision. Just as she was about to give up, she heard a rustle in the reeds. A large, shadowy figure emerged, a dog, or perhaps a wolf, with piercing eyes that seemed to see right through her. The animal approached, its gaze steady and calm. Lucy reached out a trembling hand, and to her amazement, it nudged her gently, as if encouraging her to stand. With newfound determination, Lucy got to her feet, the animal leading the way. She followed it through the swamp, every step a struggle. Behind her, she could hear Emma and Alex cursing and splashing as they tried to follow. The animal led Lucy to a firmer path, and they moved faster, the sounds of pursuit growing fainter. Finally, they reached solid ground. Lucy collapsed, exhausted and shivering. The animal stayed by her side, its presence a comforting reassurance. She looked back, but there was no sign of Emma and Alex. She had escaped, for now. Lucy's body ached with exhaustion, every muscle burning from her frantic escape. She lay on the forest floor, too tired to move, when she felt the nudge of a warm nose against her cheek. She opened her eyes to see the large, enigmatic dog, its eyes intelligent and almost human in their understanding. The animal nudged her again, urging her to stand. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice barely a breath. With great effort, she rose to her feet, leaning on the dog for support. The forest around her was dark and dense, but the animal led her confidently through the underbrush. Each step was a struggle, but Lucy felt a flicker of hope. She wasn't alone. After what felt like hours, they reached a clearing. A small, rustic cabin stood in the center, smoke curling from its chimney. The sight of it brought tears to Lucy's eyes. It was a beacon of safety in the vast, unforgiving forest. The door opened, and a tall, rugged man stepped out, his eyes widening in surprise at the sight of Lucy and the dog. "What in the world?" he muttered, quickly moving to help her. "Please," Lucy managed to say, her voice cracking. "Help me." He didn't need any more encouragement. Gently, he guided her inside the cabin, where the warmth and light enveloped her like a comforting embrace. He led her to a chair by the fireplace and wrapped a blanket around her shoulders. "My name is Daniel," he said, his voice calm and reassuring. "You're safe now. Can you tell me what happened?" Lucy tried to speak, but the words caught in her throat. The trauma of the past weeks had stolen her voice, leaving her unable to articulate the horrors she had endured. She shook her head, tears streaming down her face. "It's okay," Daniel said softly. "You don't have to talk right now. Just rest." He brought her a cup of warm tea and some bread, which she accepted gratefully. As she ate, she observed her surroundings. The cabin was small but cozy, filled with the scent of pine and the crackling of the fire. It felt like a haven, a place far removed from the dangers she had escaped. The dog, which Daniel called Shadow, lay at her feet, its eyes watching her protectively. She reached down to stroke its fur, finding comfort in the animal's steady presence. Over the next few days, Lucy stayed in the cabin, recovering her strength. Daniel was a quiet but kind host, giving her space while ensuring she had everything she needed. He asked no questions, sensing her need for silence. One evening, as they sat by the fire, Daniel finally spoke about himself. "I used to work in the city," he said, staring into the flames. "I was a cop. But something happened, a case that went wrong. I lost someone I cared about deeply. I couldn't stay there after that. So I came here, to find peace." Mary listened, her heart aching for him. She wanted to say something, to tell him she understood his pain, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, she reached out and placed her hand over his, offering silent support. Daniel looked at her, his eyes reflecting a mixture of gratitude and sorrow. "I don't know what you've been through," he said gently, "but I can see it in your eyes. You're carrying a heavy burden." Lucy nodded, tears welling up once more. She wanted to tell him everything, the abuse, the fear, the desperate escape, but her voice remained locked away. "It's okay," Daniel said, squeezing her hand. "Take your time. You're safe here." Lucy spent her days exploring the forest with Shadow, finding solace in the natural beauty around her. The forest, with its towering trees and serene silence, became her sanctuary. She began to feel a sense of belonging, a connection to the land that helped heal her wounded spirit. One afternoon, while wandering near a stream, Lucy found herself humming a tune her mother used to sing. She smiled, feeling the first stirrings of her voice returning. That evening, she sat by the fire with Daniel, feeling a newfound sense of hope. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice fragile but present. "For everything." Daniel looked at her, his eyes softening. "You don't have to thank me, Lucy. I'm just glad you're safe." In the warmth of the cabin, with Daniel and Shadow by her side, she allowed herself to believe in the possibility of a new beginning. She would find her voice again. She would reclaim her life. And with the strength she had discovered within herself, she would face whatever came next. The days in Daniel's cabin had brought Lucy a sense of safety she hadn't felt in a long time. Still, the shadows of her past haunted her, and Daniel knew she needed more than just physical recovery. One morning, he approached her with an idea. "Lucy," he said gently, "I want to take you to someone who can help you heal. Her name is Grandma Helen. She's a healer who lives deep in the forest. I think she can help you find your voice again." Lucy looked up at him, hope mingling with apprehension in her eyes. She nodded, trusting Daniel's judgment. They set off early, the forest bathed in the soft light of dawn. Shadow trotted alongside them, ever the loyal companion. The path to Helen's village was overgrown and winding, the dense foliage adding an element of suspense to their journey. Lucy clung to Daniel's side, her anxiety rising with each step into the unknown. As they navigated through the dense forest, the trees seemed to close in around them, creating an almost mystical atmosphere. Birds chirped in the canopy above, and the air was filled with the scent of pine and earth. They crossed a shallow stream, the cold water a refreshing reprieve from the trek. "Watch your step here," Daniel warned as they approached a steep incline covered in moss. After hours of walking, they finally arrived at a small, secluded village. In the center stood a quaint cottage adorned with herbs hanging from the eaves and wind chimes that sang softly in the breeze. Grandma Helen was already waiting for them on the porch, her eyes kind and knowing. "Welcome, child," she greeted Lucy, her voice warm and soothing. "Daniel has told me about you. Come inside, and let's see what we can do." The interior of the cottage was filled with the rich scents of dried herbs and flowers. Bundles of lavender, sage, and rosemary hung from the ceiling, and jars of various tinctures lined the shelves. The atmosphere was both comforting and mysterious. Helen led Lucy to a cozy corner, where a fire crackled softly in the hearth. "Sit, dear," she instructed. "We'll start with some tea." Lucy sat down, feeling a sense of calm wash over her. Daniel took a seat nearby, his presence reassuring. Helen brewed a fragrant tea from a blend of herbs and handed a steaming cup to Lucy. "Drink this," Helen said. "It will help ease your mind and open your heart." Lucy sipped the tea, its warmth spreading through her like a soothing balm. Helen began to prepare a series of rituals designed to heal and restore. She mixed herbs and oils, murmuring incantations under her breath. The room filled with a gentle, otherworldly energy. "We carry our wounds deep within us," Helen explained as she worked. "But with time and care, they can heal. You've been through a great deal, Lucy, but you are strong. Stronger than you know." Lucy felt a sense of peace envelop her as Helen continued the healing process. The rituals were simple yet profound, each one designed to cleanse and rejuvenate. Helen applied a salve to Lucy's burn, the cool ointment bringing immediate relief. As the days passed, Lucy began to feel lighter, as if a heavy weight was being lifted from her shoulders. Daniel and Helen both played a part in her healing, their support unwavering. Daniel shared stories of his time in the city, of his own struggles and the peace he had found in the forest. "You're like a phoenix, Lucy," Daniel said one evening as they sat by the fire. "Rising from the ashes, stronger and more beautiful." Lucy smiled, the first genuine smile she had managed in a long time. "Thank you, Daniel. For everything." Daniel's eyes softened. You don't have to thank me, Lucy. Just knowing you're healing is enough. They spent their days in the village, helping Helen with her herb garden, gathering plants from the forest, and learning about the natural remedies she crafted. Lucy found joy in the simple tasks, her bond with Daniel growing stronger with each passing day. One afternoon, as they gathered wildflowers by the stream, Lucy felt a surge of gratitude. Daniel, she said, her voice steady and clear, I think I'm starting to feel whole again. Daniel smiled, his eyes reflecting his pride and relief. I'm glad to hear that, Lucy. You've come a long way. Lucy's nights were no longer plagued by nightmares. Instead, she dreamed of the forest, of the healing rituals, and of the newfound family she had found in Daniel and Helen. Her voice, once lost to trauma, began to return, each word spoken a testament to her resilience. The journey to Helen's village had been one of suspense and uncertainty, but it had led Lucy to a place of healing and hope. She knew the road ahead would still have its challenges, but with Daniel and Helen by her side, she felt ready to face them. Together, they sat by the stream, the sun setting in a blaze of colors. The days in Helen's village had brought Lucy a sense of peace she hadn't known for a long time. Her voice was returning, and the nightmares were fading. She felt safe, surrounded by people who cared for her. But peace, as Lucy knew too well, could be fragile. Daniel had taken to patrolling the forest regularly, ensuring the area remained undisturbed. One morning, he set out with Shadow by his side. I'll be back by evening, he told Lucy, giving her a reassuring smile. Stay close to Helen. Lucy nodded, waving as he disappeared into the trees. She spent the day helping Helen with her herbal remedies, enjoying the simple, grounding tasks. As evening approached, a sense of unease settled over her. Daniel hadn't returned. Helen, I'm worried about Daniel, Lucy said, her voice tinged with anxiety. He should be back by now. Helen's brow furrowed. Let's give him a bit more time, dear. Sometimes patrols can take longer. But as darkness fell, worry turned to dread. Shadow suddenly bounded into the clearing, barking urgently. Lucy's heart skipped a beat. Something's wrong, she said, her voice shaking. We have to find him. Helen nodded, her face pale. Brian is nearby. He'll help us. Let's go. They moved quickly, Shadow leading the way through the dense forest. The air was thick with tension, every sound amplified by their fear. After what felt like an eternity, they found Daniel. He lay on the ground, blood seeping from a wound on his side. Nearby, signs of a struggle were evident. Daniel! Lucy cried, rushing to his side. He was unconscious, his breathing shallow. Lucy's hands trembled as she pressed her scarf to his wound, trying to stem the bleeding. Helen knelt beside her, examining the wound. It's bad, but he's strong. We need to get him back to the village. Brian should be here any moment. As if on cue, Brian appeared, his face set in grim determination. What happened? Poachers, Helen replied, her voice steady despite the fear in her eyes. We need to move him quickly. Brian nodded and gently lifted Daniel, carrying him with ease. They moved swiftly, the journey back to the village a blur of urgent motion. Lucy stayed close, her fear replaced by a fierce determination. She wouldn't let Daniel die. Not after all they had been through. Back at the cottage, they laid Daniel on a makeshift bed. Helen and Brian worked in seamless tandem, their experience evident in their efficient movements. Helen prepared herbal poultices while Brian cleaned and dressed the wound. Lucy stood by, feeling helpless. What can I do? She asked, desperate to help. Keep talking to him, Helen instructed. Let him know he's not alone. Lucy took Daniel's hand, her voice trembling. Daniel, please, hang on. We need you. I need you. Tears streamed down her face, but she kept speaking, her words a lifeline in the tense silence. Time seemed to stretch endlessly, but slowly, Daniel's breathing steadied. Helen and Brian didn't stop, their focus unbroken. Lucy continued to talk, her voice growing stronger with each word. Hours later, Daniel stirred, his eyes fluttering open. "Lucy," he whispered, his voice weak but alive. "I'm here," she replied, relief flooding through her. "You're going to be okay. We've got you." Daniel managed a faint smile. "Knew you were strong," he murmured before slipping back into unconsciousness. Lucy sat back, exhaustion finally catching up with her. Helen placed a comforting hand on her shoulder. "He'll pull through," she said softly. "He's a fighter, just like you." In the days that followed, Lucy never left Daniel's side. She helped Helen with his care, learning more about healing than she ever had before. Each day, Daniel grew stronger, his recovery a testament to their combined efforts. One evening, as they sat by Daniel's bedside, Lucy looked at Helen and Brian. "Thank you," she said, her voice steady. "I don't know what we would have done without you." Helen smiled, her eyes warm. "We're family now, Lucy. We take care of each other." Brian nodded. "You showed great courage out there. Daniel's lucky to have you." Lucy felt a swell of pride and gratitude. She looked at Daniel, who was now awake and alert. "We're lucky to have each other," she said, squeezing his hand. Daniel smiled, his strength returning. "Together, we can face anything." The attack had been a brutal reminder of the dangers that still lurked, but it had also shown Lucy the depth of her own courage and the strength of the bonds they had formed. The forest outside their window was dark and silent, but inside the cabin there was light, warmth, and a sense of hope that had been hard-won. Lucy knew their journey wasn't over, but for the first time, she felt truly prepared to face it, surrounded by those she loved and who loved her in return. The weeks following Daniel's recovery were a testament to the strength and unity of their little family. Lucy, now more confident and resilient, felt a sense of purpose and belonging she hadn't experienced in years. But the calm was soon disrupted by the arrival of an unexpected guest. One crisp autumn morning, as Lucy and Daniel were tending to the garden, a car pulled up the dirt path leading to the cabin. Daniel's expression shifted from curiosity to shock as a woman stepped out. Lucy watched as Daniel's face softened, a mix of emotions playing across his features. "Rebecca?" Daniel's voice was tinged with disbelief. The woman, elegant and poised, nodded, her eyes filled with unshed tears. "Hello, Daniel. It's been a long time." Rebecca's arrival was both a surprise and a revelation. As they sat around the fireplace, she recounted her story. Years ago, she and Daniel had been deeply in love, but circumstances had torn them apart. She had pursued a career in law, hoping to make a difference, but the distance and time had created a rift that seemed insurmountable. "I thought I'd lost you forever," Daniel said quietly, his eyes reflecting the pain of old wounds. Rebecca reached out, her hand resting on his. "I never stopped thinking about you, Daniel. When I heard about what happened, I knew I had to find you." Over the next few days, Rebecca integrated into their lives. She and Lucy formed a bond, Rebecca's strength and determination inspiring Lucy even more. Rebecca shared her skills, teaching Lucy about the legal system and empowering her with knowledge. One evening, as they sat together, Rebecca broached a difficult subject. "Lucy, I need to know everything about Emma. We have to make sure she can never hurt you again." Lucy hesitated, but Daniel's reassuring nod gave her the courage to speak. She recounted the horrors she had endured, her voice steady despite the painful memories. Rebecca listened intently, her expression growing more resolute with each word. "We'll fight this," Rebecca declared. "Emma won't get away with what she's done." The decision to pursue legal action against Emma set the stage for a suspenseful and intense battle. Rebecca used her expertise to build a strong case, and Daniel and Lucy provided the necessary support and evidence. The courtroom was a stark, intimidating place, but Lucy faced it with newfound courage. Rebecca's arguments were compelling, her presence commanding. She painted a vivid picture of Emma's cruelty, the abuse, and the threats. The tension was palpable as witnesses were called and evidence was presented. Emma, cold and defiant, sat across the room, her eyes filled with contempt. But Lucy held her ground, drawing strength from Daniel and Rebecca's unwavering support. The legal battle was grueling, but with each passing day, it became clear that justice was within their reach. During a break in the proceedings, Rebecca pulled Lucy aside. "You're doing amazingly well," she said, her voice filled with pride. "Your bravery is what's making this possible." Lucy smiled, feeling the weight of Rebecca's words. "I couldn't have done it without you and Daniel." Rebecca nodded, her eyes softening. "Daniel and we have a lot to work through. But seeing you fight like this has given me hope. Maybe we can find a way back to each other." Lucy's heart swelled with warmth. She had come to see Rebecca not just as an ally but as a part of her family. "I hope so too," she said softly. The day of Emma's trial had arrived, and the air was thick with anticipation. The courtroom buzzed with whispers and the occasional rustle of paper. Lucy sat between Daniel and Rebecca, her hands clasped tightly in her lap, the tension palpable. She had spent countless nights reliving the horrors Emma had inflicted, and now the moment of reckoning was at hand. The judge entered, and the room fell silent. "All rise," the bailiff intoned. The proceedings began, and the prosecution wasted no time in laying out the charges against Emma. The evidence was damning, and with each piece presented, the gravity of Emma's actions weighed heavily on the room. Emma sat across the courtroom, her face a mask of defiance. Her lawyer attempted to discredit Lucy's testimony, but Rebecca's legal acumen and unwavering support for Lucy proved formidable. "Miss Emma," Rebecca began during her cross-examination, her voice steady and authoritative, "can you explain why numerous witnesses, including doctors and neighbors, have testified to seeing the signs of abuse on Lucy?" Emma's gaze hardened. "They're mistaken," she snapped. "Lucy was a difficult child. I did what I had to do." Rebecca leaned forward, her eyes narrowing. "So, you admit to disciplining her?" Emma's lawyer objected, but the judge allowed Rebecca to continue. "Discipline is one thing, Miss Emma. What Lucy endured was systematic torture. Burning, isolation, threats to her life, these are not acts of discipline but of cruelty." Lucy's heart pounded as she listened, each word a strike against her former tormentor. Next, the defense tried to paint Lucy as a troubled child with a history of lying. They brought forth a witness who claimed Lucy had always been prone to exaggeration. Lucy stood, her legs trembling but her resolve firm. She approached the witness stand, her eyes meeting the jury. "I was scared," she began, her voice clear and strong. "Scared that no one would believe me. Scared of what Emma would do if I told anyone the truth. But I'm not scared anymore." Daniel and Rebecca watched with pride as Lucy's words resonated through the room. Her bravery was evident, and it was clear to everyone that she spoke the truth. The trial continued with more testimonies and evidence, each revelation more damning than the last. The prosecution's final statement was powerful, painting a vivid picture of the abuse and manipulation Lucy had endured. Finally, the judge called for a recess before the jury would deliberate. Lucy sat with Daniel and Rebecca, their support unwavering. "You did amazing, Lucy," Daniel said, his voice filled with pride. Rebecca squeezed her hand. "No matter what happens, remember that you've already won by standing up for yourself."